Hello everybody and welcome to today's video on the William Wordsworth poem Lines Written in Early Spring. You can download a free worksheet to accompany the video through following the link in the description. Born in 1770, Wordsworth's early life was marked by tragedy. Both of his parents died before the poet had reached his mid-teens. After his parents' deaths, William and his sister were split apart and sent to live with different relatives. It would be 9 years before he saw her again. William was sent to live with an uncle he did not get on with at all. He was treated so badly by his relatives that he considered suicide. The poet's disillusionment with people, evident in today's poem, is rooted in his early personal life. Wordsworth spent his days away from the house exploring the countryside, and this began his relationship with nature, a relationship which would continue when he moved to a rural part of Somerset in 1797, where this poem is set. In the prose works of William Wordsworth 1876, we find Wordsworth's explanation that Lines Written in Early Spring was actually composed while I was sitting by the side of the brook that runs down from the coombe in which stands the village of Alford through the grounds of Alfoxden. It was a chosen resort of mine. And so this poem is about a real experience in the poet's life. Wordsworth belonged to the first generation of Romantic poets. To understand Romanticism, we need to understand the literary movement that went before it, Enlightenment poetry. Enlightenment poetry from the 1650s to the 1780s focused on realistic poems which instructed people. This was a time of scientific developments and rationalism. The French Revolution was influenced by the Enlightenment, with its overthrow of the monarchy and striving for political freedom. Wordsworth himself was a supporter of the French Revolution at first, having lived in France in the early 1790s. However, the French Revolution devolved into bloodshed and chaos, bringing home the savagery of humanity. Wordsworth came back to England with a sense of political disillusionment. Both personally and politically then, the poet was disillusioned with the way humans treated each other, a key theme in today's poem. Romantic poetry can be defined as containing a number of conventions. Firstly, a dislike of urban life and embrace of the natural world. Secondly, a love of the supernatural. And third, a use of ordinary, everyday language. Against these criteria, it is clear that Lines Written in Early Spring is a romantic poem. The poem is not only set in the countryside, but it also gives nature a supernatural element and uses mostly ordinary, everyday language. While the language may not seem ordinary to a modern reader, it was certainly so for Wordsworth's contemporaries. In fact, in the 1800 second edition of Lyrical Ballads, Wordsworth explained, "The principal object was to choose incidents and situations from common life and to relate or describe them throughout as far as was possible in a selection of language really used by men, and at the same time to throw over them a certain colouring of imagination whereby ordinary things should be presented to the mind in an unusual aspect, and further and above all to make these incidents and situations interesting by tracing in them truly, though not ostentatiously, the primary laws of our nature, chiefly as far as regards the manner in which we associate ideas in a state of excitement." So Wordsworth's main goal with these poems was to take normal events, like sitting by a river and looking at nature, using words that people actually use day to day in real life, and to explore important things about human nature. The poem was published in Lyrical Ballads, a collection of poems now widely regarded as the start of Romantic literature. Lines Written in Early Spring is an example of a lyric poem, a poem which focuses on personal emotions and feelings. With that in mind, let's take a look at the poem itself. Lines Written in Early Spring. I heard 1,000 blended notes, while in a grove I sate reclined, in that sweet mood when pleasant thoughts bring sad thoughts to the mind. To her fair works did nature link the human soul that through me ran, and much it grieved my heart to think what man has made of man. Through primrose tufts in that green bower the periwinkle trailed its wreaths, and 'tis my faith that every flower enjoys the air it breathes. The birds around me hopped and played, their thoughts I cannot measure, but the least motion which they made, it seemed a thrill of pleasure. The budding twigs spread out their fan to catch the breezy air, and I must think, do all I can, that there was pleasure there. If this belief from heaven be sent, if such be nature's holy plan, have I not reason to lament what man has made of man? So the poem is fairly easy to understand, but here's a brief rewriting in simple language for those who need it. I heard lots of different sounds while sat in a small wood. I was in a mood where happy thoughts make you think of sad thoughts. Nature created beautiful things which connected with my soul, and it made me very sad to think of how humans treat each other. Among the flowers and the trees a trailing plant had grown, and I believe all the flowers take pleasure in the air they breathe. The birds around me hopped and played. I cannot know what they were thinking, but they seemed to enjoy moving around. The twigs spread out to feel the breeze, and I'm convinced all of nature was enjoying itself. If this is how God made it, that nature takes pleasure in existing, don't I have every reason to be sad about the impact humans have on each other? Now, if you're studying this poem in the AQA Worlds and Lives cluster, you might want to frame your focus around the way the world affects people's lives. In that way, we can say that Lines Written in Early Spring presents the positive impact of the natural world, juxtaposed with the negative impact of the human world. Despite the speaker's attempts to rejoice in the world of nature, they're continually brought back to negative thoughts about the impact humans have on each other. Or, if you want to frame this as a poem about belonging, we might say that true belonging and connection can only be found in our relationship with nature, but the negative impacts of human action impinge upon that. As Wordsworth set out to use a selection of language really used by men, it's unsurprising that the poem doesn't contain a huge amount of figurative language. However, there are some examples worthy of analysis. To begin with, there's personification, which means giving human-like qualities to something that is not human. In the poem, we see that nature is personified, where every flower enjoys and the budding twigs spread out their fan. This personification, coupled with the religious imagery of heaven and nature's holy plan, presents the natural world as supernatural, as worthy of respect and admiration. Furthermore, the poet's repetition of pleasure when describing nature suggests that the natural world is to be admired. The speaker rejoices in nature, seeing it not as some passive backdrop to life, but as a living, breathing entity which can provide inspiration and guidance to humans. The natural world is to be revered. This admiration of nature is also seen in other parts of the poem. The hyperbole of "I heard 1,000 blended notes" suggests that the speaker is overwhelmed by the beauty of nature. The positive emotive language of fair, meaning beautiful in this context, pleasure and enjoys reinforces the idea that the natural world is one to be admired and respected. Just what is it that the speaker finds beautiful about nature? Well, for one, there's a sense of nature as harmonious. The blended notes, the way the periwinkle trailed its wreaths through primrose tufts, the animals and plants are all united together harmoniously. However, despite the speaker's attempts to rejoice in the world of nature, they're continually brought back to negative thoughts about a different aspect of the world, the impact humans have on each other. Wordsworth's use of repetition highlights the limits the natural world has upon the speaker. At the end of the first stanza, the speaker's pleasant thoughts turn to sad thoughts, described in the second stanza as being focused on what man has made of man. Now let's stop and think about the structure of this poem. As always, it's not about just spotting things. We need to think about whether we can link them to the meaning of the poem. So, the poem is written in quatrains, that's stanzas made up of 4 lines. The rhyme scheme is ABAB, so in each stanza the first and third lines rhyme, as do the second and fourth. In a poem focusing on the harmony of nature, the structure itself is harmonious. However, there is some lack of stability and harmony seen in the poem's use of syllables. The syllable count per line is 8, 8, 8, 6. The pattern of 8-syllable lines is broken in the final line of each stanza, and that break creates a structural emphasis on the content of those final lines which include these: bring sad thoughts to the mind, what man has made of man, what man has made of man. In his 2012 book Wordsworth's Ethics, Adam Potke points out these successive mysteries unfold in curtailed lines of 6 rather than 8 syllables, so that as we come to the end of each stanza, we have a rhythmic as well as semantic sense of something missing. Thank you to Adam Potke for giving me permission to use that reference in this video. I love the way he phrases it, a rhythmic as well as semantic sense of something missing. The end lines in each stanza are not only shorter than the others, they are the lines which often focus on the impact humans have on other humans. So do check out his book, which I'll link in the description. Now, how do we link this to our focus on the way the world affects people's lives? Well, even though the poem focuses on the power of the harmony found in the natural world, the fact that 3 of the stanzas end with this shortened line focusing on the human problem symbolises how, despite the speaker's attempts to rejoice in the world of nature, they're continually brought back to negative thoughts about the impact humans have on each other. It's also interesting to note that the exact nature of this negative impact remains unexplained. Is this about the French Revolution? Is it about those people in Wordsworth's life who he so struggled with? Is it the Industrial Revolution? We're not told. There's clear disillusionment with human action, but the deliberate vagueness leaves us little to explore. It's as if the speaker is trying to focus on the glory of nature, but the shortened lines and stanza ends quoted here show that he's unsuccessful in doing so. By reflecting on and considering the beauty and power of nature, the speaker is continually reminded of how humanity falls short of the same ideal. In fact, we can take this a stage further. It's not that the speaker can't take their mind off of what man has made of man, it is nature itself that draws the speaker's thoughts to the negative impact humans have upon each other. We see this in the first stanza where we read, "Pleasant thoughts bring sad thoughts to the mind." And so even though there is nothing explicit about what exactly man's actions are, if it is nature that brings them to mind, we can consider what nature is doing. Blended notes as birds around me hopped and played perhaps suggests harmony and unity. Every flower enjoys the air it breathes, and the pleasure experienced by the birds and twigs is suggestive of taking delight in existence. So perhaps this harmony, unity, and joy in nature reminds the speaker of the disharmony, disunity, and sorrow in the ways humans treat and interact with each other. Now, of course, this could be a direct comment on the French Revolution or the Industrial Revolution, or it could be more personal for the poet, thinking back to his uncle. We're not told. What we are told very clearly is that nature, despite its power and beauty, is unable to keep the speaker's mind off of those negative human traits. If you found this video useful, please do subscribe to the channel and give it a thumbs up.